Welcome back to the show, people. We thought we'd do a What's the Score at 4, catch up with some of the news that's out and about in the world of football. I have a couple of unbelievable guests on with me. I'm your host, as ever, Dan Potts. And I've got Savva back. Savva, what you saying, bruv?
Good, man. Sorry I was late. You know how life is. I was just
No, I'm glad to have you, mate.
trawling the net for to hopefully see Conte sacked, but not seen it yet. So sorry, man. Sorry.
Don't be, mate. It's fine. Don't worry. I thought we'd have a Spurs chat, and I thought we'd have an Arsenal chat. There's nobody else to really bring on other than my boy Kenny. Ken, what you saying, Kenny?
I'm very happy to be. It's the first time being on your channel. It's an honour, and also I want to say happy to your guests as well. Be gentle with me. Don't hear what I've got to say before you start hating on me, because I just say I try to say as it is, and obviously being a North Londoner as well, being North London born and bred, I do have one eye on what goes on in N17. It's something that every Arsenal fan who's born and bred in Islington always has an eye. And the reason why is because for some reason, there was some bad parenting when I was growing up in around the Finsbury Park area, where some parents allowed their children to support Tottenham, even though they lived in Arsenal areas. I think that's just sacrilege.
What a crime! What a crime!
Shocking.
Should be involved.
Shocking.
Islington for Arsenal and Haringey for Tottenham. Although it seems that there's more Arsenal fans in Haringey there are in Tottenham fans, but Savva's going to correct me any minute now, aren't you?
No. Listen, I think Dan knows me well enough by now. I'm in no position to be talking down to any football fans anywhere. My club is a circus, so don't worry about that.
Well, listen, we're going to come into talking about Conte in a minute, but first of all, I'm going to bring up the news that broke today that Mesut Ozil is retiring from football. And Kenny, you and I grew up seeing some unbelievable players. You ever some more than me because you go back longer than myself. Mesut Ozil is recognised as a fantastic footballer in terms of what he's done within his footballing career. He now retires from football, having been a former Arsenal player. As Arsenal fans, some think very fondly of Mesut Ozil, some get very frustrated by him, and some don't really have much of an opinion about him. So, Kenny, let's come to you first. I want to get Savva's take on this as well. Mesut Ozil's career, will he look back at it and think, wow? Will he look back at it and think, frustrating? And what did you make of him as a footballer, particularly when he was at Arsenal, Ken?
Well, first and foremost, he's going to look back at it fondly for a simple reason, is that he won the World Cup with Germany, who I believe he saved his best performances for anyway. And also he got to play for Real Madrid. Every lad's dream is to play for, either Real Madrid and win a title with the country of your birth. And, he's going to be very happy with that. In terms of his club career, if you look at these performances for firstly, if you look at internationally for the under-21s, do you remember in 2009 when in the final of the European Championships in the under-21s, Germany thrashed England 4-0. It wasn't even close. And they had players like Khedira, Mesut Ozil, those and Mesut Ozil ran the show. Those are when they were under Horst Rubesch, and then also at Werder Bremen as well. Even though they got to the Europa League final, they lost to Shakhtar Donetsk. Mesut Ozil was very much a mainstay, and then obviously Real Madrid, and obviously for the national team for Deutschland. Those were his best performances. I think that when he came to Arsenal, if you take away, like the 2015-2016 season, or probably when he first came to the club for the first 6 months, apart from that, it's been hit and miss with Arsenal. That's just factual. A lot of Arsenal fans see Mesut Ozil as, the alpha and the omega. They say that if you don't know football, you don't recognise Mesut Ozil's contributions, and that's fine. He was fantastic for Arsenal when we played at the Emirates, but away from home, name me which matches he's won for us away from home against a big six side. He just hasn't happened. And I think that's the problem with Mesut Ozil. One thing you're always going to agree with Mesut Ozil, technically and in terms of natural talent, he is a lot better than a lot of Arsenal players we've ever had. For a start, he outstrips, Odegaard. He outstrips Saka. And, the only player who's probably less technically gifted than more technically gifted than Mesut Ozil, Santi Cazorla. But if you look at overall, with the talent Mesut Ozil has, he should have been more of a prominent figure than he ever was at Arsenal. And that is therein lies a problem. Everyone says he's not that kind of player, that he does things off the ball that we don't see in terms of running off the ball, the quick passes here and there. But when you see Odegaard now, who hasn't even got 50% of his talent, and you see that Odegaard is a creative player, but what you're seeing is numbers, i.e. goals and assists, plus you're seeing work rate. And it's no kind of coincidence that we are challenging there. So you see Saka, another player who's not, if you think in terms of like technique and the natural ability, he's not on this guy's, he's not on Ozil's level, not in a million years. But in terms of effectiveness for the football club, work rate, levels above Ozil. In terms of like productivity, goals and assists, 12 league goals so far. There's still 10 games left, plus 10 assists. That's worlds away from what Mesut is producing. And therein lies the problem with a lot of Arsenal fans. A lot of Arsenal fans fell in love with the idea of having a Mesut Ozil football club. So any performances, say out of 10 performances, he performs in about four, that's memorable for him because it's Mesut Ozil. Any other player wouldn't get that kind of leeway, and therein lies the problem. And he became a problem as well. He was a problem for Unai Emery. He was a problem for Arsene Wenger towards the end, where him and Alexis Sanchez took it into the 11th hour in terms of like their contractual demands and trying to engineer moves. One of them definitely tried to leave Man City. But when you talk about Mesut Ozil and you talk about his career, the guy fell out of love with football after what happened in Russia for the World Cup. Obviously, there was tensions between him and his meeting with I think his man, was it Erdogan? So if you take out all these factors, the fact that he felt that he was seen as a Turk rather than a German after Germany floundered in the World Cup, that's when Mesut Ozil stopped being a footballer. But the problem with Arsenal fans, the coincidence about that is that he was in the infancy of his £350 a week contract. So you've got a player earning £350,000 a week, falling out of love with football. There's a problem. A manager like Unai Emery, who's going to try and build something around a player, is going to have a problem with that. He's not going to have that. It took for Mick Arteta to decide that, I can't have this guy around me. Can't have him. Now, a lot of people who watch this are going to say it was a lot to do with his political leanings in terms of like the Uyghur Muslims in China. The fact is, when he made that remark, Arsenal didn't deselect him. He played that game against Man City a few days after he made those remarks and after the Chinese TV decided to pull Arsenal matches. So I don't buy that as a reason. One of the reasons why he was asked to leave. He was asked to leave because he wasn't value for money. The only thing was, especially on the field, he was value for money in terms of like merchandise, but merchandise don't win me the league. And he wasn't a peripheral. He wasn't a prominent figure when we won the FA Cup. If you look at the 2015 league FA Cup, you could say Santi Cazorla was one of our best players, Alexis Sanchez. And then if you want to be more perverse, you can say, well, Aaron Ramsey's a bigger hero than Mesut Ozil because he scored the winner in 2014 and 2017. If you want me to get that simplistic, but in conclusion, because I'm rabbing on a bit, Mesut Ozil was a massive, massive disappointment for Arsenal Football Club, and he was no way going to be a legend. And he's only going to be memorable because of the frustration that he caused amongst a lot of older fans like myself.
Listen, I think you made some really key points there, Kenny, a lot of which I agree with you on. Savva, let's put the same question to you about Mesut Ozil, the footballer, and Mesut Ozil in terms of what he'd be remembered for, I suppose, in the Premier League years at Arsenal, mate. What's your thoughts on this one, Savva?
Yeah, I mean, look, when you look at Mesut Ozil, the footballer, just a quick look at his wiki page, which I've just brought up in the background. He's very decorated from World Cups to, UEFA Cup finals, to leagues in Madrid, to cups in Madrid, cups in Germany, cups for Arsenal, German Player of the Year about 5 or 6 times, UEFA Team of the Year a couple of times. So, yeah, he's got all of that going on. I just can't help but think, and he was a talented, very talented footballer. He falls into that bracket for me of And there's so many that fall into this bracket of on his day. And there's so many footballers that their careers, you go, on their day, they were unplayable. And I think the difference between him being an on his day player and a consistent player was, it looked like, I can't speak to this, but it looked like it was his attitude. It looked like it was, yes, I'm up for it today. Don't quite fancy it today. But supremely talented footballer. You don't play somebody. I'm guessing somebody will find a player now to back up this argument is stupid. You don't play 4 years for Madrid and 8 years for Arsenal if you are not a technically talented good footballer. So he's got all that going for him. Unfortunately, I'm guessing, like Kenny said there, at the end of the day, he is going to be known for what was that last year and a half, where it kind of rumbled on about the money and about downing tools, and they just need to pay to get rid of him. But listen, when that guy is speaking to his kids and his grandkids in 20, 30, 40 years' time, he's going to be talking about, see that World Cup? Done that. Yeah, see the Spanish League with the biggest club in the world? Yeah, done that. Do you know what I mean? So, very good footballer, very good career. Could he have made more of it? Yeah, he could have. But hey, there's very few players that you know, when you look at the Zlatans, the Messis, the Ronaldos, the Xavis, there's very few of them that go into that bracket of consistently brilliant over 12 to 15 to 16 years. So he's in good company, Ozil. But for me, just in that little bracket below the world-class tag for me.
Well, I think that's fair, and the way I see it is this: football is about winning trophies. Don't get me wrong, but having said that, I also know a lot of bang average footballers that have managed to win unbelievable honours in their time. I'm not saying that Ozil is one of those, but what I'm saying is that sometimes when you look at his career about what he won, it didn't always replicate the player. Technically, absolutely, it did. Probably one of the best technically gifted players I've seen, like Kenny said, along with Santi at the Emirates. Certainly, those two come to mind. What I got frustrated about from Mesut Ozil was his attitude, his mentality, and his lack of work rate. Sometimes you have those luxury players. Sometimes you have those players that you look at and think, wow, and you look at their head and think, what is going on in there? And I think with him, that was the kind of bracket I put him in. I always compare it. You could look at Jordan Henderson and James Milner, and you can look at Mesut Ozil. Which one of them's mentality would you rather have? Mesut Ozil's or James Milner's or Jordan Henderson? You'd have their mentality. You wouldn't have their technical ability, mind you. You'd have Mesut Ozil's. But if you combine the two of those, you probably have one of the better players in the world. Also, what frustrated me with Mesut Ozil was the fact that it was always outside, something going on. Politics always followed him everywhere. And for me, it was frustrating when you've got somebody like that that brings that toxicity into the kind of training pitch and then forms little cliques with the likes of Kolasinac and Mustafi and Aubameyang at times and Lacazette, who are all getting involved in the wrong kind of setups. And I think Mesut Ozil was the driving force within that. And since he's left Arsenal, he's made some real digs and some comments about trusting a process and the fact that we shouldn't really be doing X, Y, Z. Now, whether you believe that or not, you keep that under wraps. You don't start throwing people under the bus that apparently your ex-teammates and that you still have amazing connection with these fan base with. For me, it was frustrating. And I think I look back at that career and it'll always be a bit of a bad taste in my mouth with how Mesut Ozil left Arsenal. I never thought you should have signed that contract for 350k a week. I always thought we should have done all we can to keep Alexis Sanchez instead of Mesut Ozil. Or we get rid of both of them and start again. And I think by keeping him, it started what then became the norm when Aubameyang did it as well. And I think that there was a lot of stuff that went wrong around the Mesut Ozil era. And I'll always remember him as a fantastic player. I'll always remember him as an unbelievable footballer technically. Some of the assists he made at the Emirates were outstanding. Some of the passage of play was superb. And the creativity that he had in a couple of seasons was superb. I think 19 assists in one season was near on a record for him at the Arsenal. But I don't ever remember, like Kenny says, him going and taking the game by the scruff of the neck at the Etihad or at Stamford Bridge or at Old Trafford or at Anfield. I never saw him against Tottenham, to be fair, and thought, wow, Mesut Ozil is absolutely killing this. I can remember him doing well at the Emirates against those sides, don't get me wrong. But sometimes when it's a wet night on a Wednesday and you need him in the Europa League or the Champions League or against one of the teams I've mentioned in the top six, he just kind of hid and become a little bit invisible. Now, a lot of people are comparing his style of football to Martin Ødegaard. For me, if you ask me who's the better footballer, well, obviously Ozil's had a career and Martin Ødegaard is just starting his. he will be better than Mesut Ozil, and I'll tell you why. Because up there, he's better. He has got the mentality that shows you how to work hard. He's got a brilliant culture around him at the moment, which is working into his favour. He's definitely got leadership qualities that Ozil didn't have, which is why he's wearing the armband. And technically, I think he's got the potential to be just as good, if not better. So when I look back at the careers of Martin Ødegaard and Mesut Ozil, I don't know yet if he's going to win as much as Mesut Ozil, but I think he'll be remembered more of a team player and in a better way than Mesut Ozil will, that's for sure. But listen, he's retired now. He's had a good career. He won't look back at it and think, wow, how the hell did I get through that one? He's got a lot to show for it. And when he came through at Germany as a youngster, when he was at Schalke, Werder Bremen, I thought, wow, this player looks superb. And when he went to Real Madrid under Jose Mourinho, as the comments were saying earlier, he was one of the best number 10s in the world. And Jose thought he was the number 10 that, everybody would be looking at. And when Ronaldo came out and said, what the hell are we getting rid of him for? He set me up all season. He's a good footballer.
Yeah.
I think he could have done better at Arsenal. But Kenny, I wanted to finish with you on this one. Where does he lie in terms of Arsenal players, not legends? He's not in the Henri Bergkamp bracket, of course. But if you was to throw some names at me in terms of whereabouts he fits in that bracket, would it be like a Paul Merson? Would it be like a Martin Keown? Throw some names at me as to where you think he lies?
Paul Merson won two leagues for us, and he won in Europe for us. So he's not on that level. Martin Keown won leagues for us, so he's not on that level. Legends are people who can win me the league. We can win in Europe. Mesut Ozil didn't do it for me. He did it for other clubs, and he won the World Cup for his country. And that is a fantastic achievement because, as I said before, Mesut Ozil saved his best performances for the national team. Yogi Love built a team around Mesut Ozil. He changed formations in order to get the best out of Mesut Ozil and switched positions. Sometimes he was on the left, sometimes he was behind the front two, sometimes he played a deep role. As long as they could get Mesut on the ball, that was enabled, players like Muller, to get in forward positions and be effective and win games for Germany. 2010 World Cup is fantastic. 2014 not as great as a 2010, but that's Mesut Ozil. But in terms of what he did for Arsenal, no way is he on that level. I regard Santi Cazorla as a better footballer than him.
Yeah, I agree.
More than he was, and I think that if we got Santi Cazorla fit, who knows? I'm not saying we made a challenge, but he was a much better. And it's not me being, anti-Ozil. Ozil acknowledges this himself. And around that era, you spoke to any Arsenal player, and they said who was the best player technically. They always chose Cazorla.
Yeah,
Ozil himself. It's not me being great, but in terms of Ozil, you've got to give the guy respect because he has won the FA Cup. He has won trophies. He was part of the team that got us to the Europa League final against Chelsea, which, every Arsenal fan wants to forget about. So there were good times at the football club for Ozil, especially at the Emirates. That game against Leicester City, that game out of this world. And, game against Man United, won 1-3-0 in 2015, 2016 in that season. Can't do it. But
I remember Liverpool 3-3. Do you remember that one around Christmas time? Superb he was.
I can think of a few players who've done better. He's not on Perez's level. Perez is probably, if you talk about the greatest Arsenal players of all time, you call it Brady, Bergkamp, Henry, and then probably Perez gets in that conversation. Mesut Ozil's nowhere near that. He's nowhere near Adams. So I think he's more on that kind of level around, probably Ramsey, Santi Cazorla. And that's sad. It's sad because Mesut Ozil should have been the best player in the world. His footballing brain and technical ability is frightening. I've never seen anything like it. Why did we get the short straw when he came to us? The guy had so much ability. If you watched him playing for those Germany under 21s under Horst Rubesch, and you watched him from Werder Bremen and those early years at Real Madrid, I don't know, Savva, obviously you must have seen this from put on Sky Sports news after we beat you in North London derby, and Drew got that goal. When they went, right, we're going to the Arsenal, and you saw all these Arsenal fans getting excited because Mesut Ozil came to the club. That's how I felt. I went up there, and then he took me down there. That's why. He's not a great, an Arsenal great. He may go down as a great for a lot of Arsenal fans, but for me, nah, not a
No, listen, I
chance.
think that's fair. And if you're talking about the Emirates era around that time, for me, Fabregas, Alexis Sanchez, and Santi Cazorla are three names that I put above him straight away. So, but listen, I don't want to do much disrespect to the lad because he's retired today. I wish him all the best now. But I thought it was worth mentioning. We're going to come back to Arsenal in a minute, but Savva, it'd be rude not to discuss the elephant in the room, mate. Antonio Conte looks like he's finished at Tottenham, in my opinion, but I wanted to get your opinions now on not so much what he said, because I think everybody knows you're disappointed by those comments, but where the Spurs go from now is my question, which no one quite knows how to answer. And I've asked you this before about what the Spurs do now because they've tried everything, but there's a lot of rumours that Ryan Mason might take you until the end. There's rumours that you're going to try and get somebody else in.
Yeah.
I'd like to know what Tottenham fans want, because I'm a bit confused, if I'm honest with you now.
The thing is, I guess that question of what do Tottenham fans want, it's not a one size fits all.
Right.
This is not a unified fan base in any way, shape, or form. Look, you have got people who love the owners, people who hate the owners, people who loved Conte, people who hated Conte, people who like Paratici, the director of football, people who think he's done a dreadful job, people who love our squad, people who hate our squad. It is so fractured, our fan base at the moment, that it is unbelievable. It's where you guys were, but without the trophies to go with it, right? So even when you guys were fractured, you would still go, oh, all right, we'll stick an FA Cup in the cabinet, and all right, we'll win the League Cup. We're all over the shop as a fan base. We're all over the shop as a club. And look, I can't sit here and go, yeah, my opinion is the only opinion on Tottenham Hotspur. I want to get that out there immediately. But look, even in the new manager search, look, first and foremost, let's start at the beginning. Conte's still here, right? He is still here as of now, and I've got my thumbnail ready because I'm ready for him being sacked, right? But he is still here at the moment, and then the conversation immediately turns to, right, okay, well, if he's going, the rumours today are, well, Paratici's going as well, because Paratici's the one who brought him to the club. He's the one that bought the players. He's the one that agrees with the Antonio Conte philosophy and ethos of football. So, right, everyone's going, right, well, let's have that mini reset. All right, we can't have the full reset, which involved the owners, Dan, because it's up to them if they sell. But we can have the mini reset with a technical director or a director of football and a manager that both join at the same time, and that both sing off, not only sing off that same, that, you know, not only reading the same page, but are on the same sentence and the same word, right? Now, you've got fans that are now saying, give me a Tuchel. Give me a Tuchel, he's won a Champions League. Give me a Luis Enrique, he's won a Champions League. Then you've got fans like me going, no point, right? We're not a win now club. We need a guy in charge who's going to be patient, who's not going to want to demand the best, and is going to be happy to work with cheaper players on lower salaries, but can mould them, almost like what Poch did all those years ago. So for me, it's a De Zerbi, a Glazer. I think I might got his name wrong, from Frankfurt, Ruben Almiron from Sporting Lisbon. Or if we're going to go to the extremes and try and do what you guys have done, go and get a Michael Carrick. Go and get a Vincent Kompany. Go and get a young, progressive, young in terms of managers, not, you know, I'm sure they're both 40 or whatever they are, but, you know, go and get a young, progressive manager that wants to play football the right way, that wants to cut their teeth, that we give time to build a team. Get rid of the elder statesmen. This is only me talking, right? This isn't all fans. Get rid of the elder statesmen at Spurs. Get rid of Lloris. Get rid of Davis. Get rid of Dyer. Get rid of Perisic. I don't care. Get rid of Kane and Son if you have to, and build a team for the future, because this club is going nowhere very, very fast. And I do not want to see in the next few days that Thomas Tuchel has been appointed as manager, another pragmatic manager that is a vanity project for Levy. So, sorry to rant. It's Tottenham Hotspur. This is what they do to us. We're a circus. And I think everyone now is just glued to Sky Sports, the apps on their phone, the Athletic, whoever, Fabrizio Romano, waiting for the, he's gone. So is it going to be Mason for 10 days? I think it may as well be. Give it to Mason. There's been talks of Mason doing it with Harry Redknapp coming in as more of an advisory capacity. I don't care. I don't care where we finish in the league, Dan. I don't want fourth. I don't want Champions League. It papers over everything. Strip it back. Build for the future. Fans should stop talking about top four as though it's a trophy. And that is my rant over. Apologies.
Well, first of all, don't apologise because I understand the frustration. I mean, it's funny because I'm a gooner, but at the same time, I understand it. But what I wanted to ask, you've actually touched on, you're completely different to Toby last night. Toby was down in the dumps on my channel. He's had enough of it all. He's got the up with it. It did make me laugh. I didn't want to, because he was so upset, I didn't want to put his leg for it, but he made me laugh because he said, I'd take a few years of pain if it meant that was going to make things better. And I thought, how many more years of pain have you already had?
I hear this all the time, Dan, with the short-term pain for long-term gain. As far as I see it, we're already in pain, so we can stay in pain. But it's not the pain, if we're going to use that word. It's the belief that comes with the manager. So, i.e., when people are looking at Conte, people are going, oh my God, this guy is a serial winner. Okay. But then they seem to neglect all the other bit of it, which is, okay, he was a serial winner at Juventus, who had the best players in the league, at Inter Milan, who had the best players in the league at the time, at Chelsea, who had the best team at that time, because I think a lot of other teams in that league at the time were in a transitional period. That's not the Antonio Conte you're getting at Tottenham. You're getting an Antonio Conte with a group of players that aren't ready to be winning. Now, you have to ask yourself, there are different types of manager. You have win now managers that you go, right, this manager has not succeeded with a star-studded squad. Who are we getting in? All right, I'm getting in a Jose, I'm getting in a Conte, a Pep Guardiola, an Ancelotti, blah, blah, blah. Then you have managers that you go, right, these players aren't expected to win anything. Can you get 20% more out of them, though, and build an ethos? And Conte's not that guy, but that's what Tottenham are. So all of these people crying that Conte's going and best manager we've ever had, not for me. A really underwhelming manager for me. A horrible, you guys would hate it. Like, bearing in mind some of the teams you lot have seen down the years at Arsenal, and bearing in mind that I hate using this, but bearing in mind that our DNA, for lack of a better term, has always been to play good, attractive football as well. Watching Antonio Conte's football is, honestly, I would rather watch your lot play. Now, let that sink in. A Spurs fan saying, I would rather watch you lot play than us. That's sad, right? That's a real sad indictment on where my football club is.
Yeah.
He put me to sleep. It was the worst football I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's poor. And, I'll bring Kenny in on this one because for me, I am with you, Savva. I would not go and get a win now manager because you don't have a win now team. And
Sure.
I think when you look at what Tottenham have got to do, they've got some all right players, Tottenham. They're not an absolute shambles in terms of they ain't got anyone. They've got Kane, they've got Son, they've got Kulusevski, they've got Bentancur, Romero, and some young players coming through as well. But they have got some absolute dross. Absolute dross. That has been there far too long. So you're right. For me, you either take the plunge on an inexperienced manager that can grow with Tottenham, Michael Carrick, Vincent Kompany, someone you think is highly rated. You go for someone who's kind of done it a little bit, Amorim from Sporting Lisbon, De Zerbi, or you try to go for someone who you know is a safe option that has already done something there. And you know who I'm talking about, Pochettino. So there's a lot of people that don't want Poch, which is quite surprising, but I kind of get it because it's kind of like been there, done that. It didn't end very well. We don't want to see that again. Let's try something new. But also, I think he might be coming in at a time where you might need someone like that. Now, it might be completely go wrong. We don't know what's going to happen. If he comes in, it might be like, we don't want this again. So before I come to Kenny, would you take Poch and why would you not if it's not the case that you want him?
It's such a difficult one with Poch, right? Because it's like, do you go back to the ex-girlfriend? You know what I mean? It ended for a reason. Poch gave us some great years. there were some not good years under him as well, which Spurs fans will not tell you about. It wasn't all wonderful, right? His first year and a half was poor. His last year was really papered over by getting to a Champions League final, which Spurs fans cannot stop talking about. But the 3 years in the middle, we saw some of the best football I've seen at Spurs. I think we were everyone's second favourite team at that time, obviously other than you guys. You know, we played the right way, if you want to say that. We pressed, we worked hard, we had skill, we had goals, we had superb defenders, we were solid. We had great games against the likes of Real Madrid. We looked really good. The problem is, for me, Poch couldn't get it over the line. And if you're going to bring Poch back, first and foremost, does that put the expectation levels back to, right, when are we next in a Champions League final? When are we going to finish second in the league? And second of all, football has moved on. In the years when Poch finished second and third, which were our two highest finishes in the Premier League, those were the years when, and I'm not belittling what he did, but those were the years when Man United, Chelsea, City, Liverpool, they were all going through a couple of years of transition, and it wasn't a great big top four like you would see now. Now, if Pochettino's coming in, he's going up against Arsenal, who are reinvigorated. Whether you win the league or not, you're up there, you're going to build and you're going to grow and whatever. Newcastle are going to continue to spend, and they're going to be up there. Man City, I don't need to explain them. Man United look like they've turned a corner, and look, they're getting 2 bids tonight for about £5 billion for their club. So they're up there. Chelsea, they'll be back. They spend so much money, they'll be back. So can Poch come back and do the same thing again with the players we've got now and some other younger players? I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether or not that would just be rehashing what hasn't worked. I don't know whether or not we need a completely new face. You know, somebody, for me, I'm going to say it. Go and get Michael Carrick. Go and get Michael Carrick and say, do you know what? You know the club. You played for us. You've spent how many years? A decade playing under the most decorated British manager in terms of Alex Ferguson. Right? You played for England for God knows how many years. You've won Champions Leagues. You've won this. You've done a brilliant job at Borough. Come here, do what you're doing at Borough, but with on a bigger scale. So, did that answer your question? If Poch comes back, it's not the worst of the options I've seen, because if the options were him or Thomas Tuchel, yeah, I'm taking Pochettino all day long. But he's not my first choice.
I think you've answered that fair. And Kenny, like Toby said something really key a couple of shows I've been on this week. We will not win anything under this ownership, was the exact words that he said. And it kind of rung true with me, really. I understand that Levy has done some fantastic things for Tottenham. I get it. The stadium, the training ground, Champions League final, title race once. I get it. I understand all that. But the answer I've got for why was he so good is, what next? Because actually, it hasn't won him anything. So what do they do now? Where's the ambition to go even better? And there hasn't been any at Tottenham, in my opinion. So they've tried win-now managers. They've tried a manager with a CV of Jose Mourinho. They've tried a project manager in Poch. And before that, they tried a proven manager over the years in Harry Redknapp. And they haven't got anything to show for it whatsoever other than a League Cup in 2008. So when I look at Tottenham Hotspur, I honestly believe they've been a laughingstock for most of my lifetime watching football. But when they actually come close to Arsenal, I thought, this is interesting. How are they doing this? And it was Pochettino, his style of football, and the fact that he just had time to build what he believed was going to be a young team. So I'm with Savva. I would go and get somebody different. I wouldn't go back to Poch. I do think it will be, by the way. I've said that all along. I think Pochettino will be the next Tottenham manager. I stand by that. But if I was them, I would agree with what Savva says. Go and do something completely different. Start again. And try and look at the recruitment in a way of, right, let's not try and go for these crazy out-of-league players like Pedro Porro that cost 45 million. Let's try and look a little bit closer to home. And let's try and look at a left-back like Rico Henry, who's been good Premier League proven for the last 3-4 years. Let's try and look at a couple of centre-halves that have done well in the Premier League. Let's look at Kyle Walker-Peters, because we got it wrong there. We should never have got rid of him. He looks really good at right-back. Centre-backs that have done well of the last couple of years in the Premier League. They've got okay players in certain positions. If they went 4-4-2, They might actually have an all right midfield with Basuma and
Mm.
Bentancur. We haven't seen it. They might
I
be
agree.
okay with Kulusevski and Richarlison on the wings with Kane and Son up top. It might be a completely different outlook. I just don't know. We haven't seen it yet, and there's been too much stubbornness from Conte in particular to stick with his three at the back and not change it. So where are you at with Kenny with where Spurs go? And I know it's hard because me and you are smiling and loving it, but if we try and take our Arsenal hats off, where do you see Tottenham having to go now?
Well, it's an easy question for me because at the day, I don't. As much as I'm a gooner, I hate the club of passion. I don't find it remotely funny because it could be us. That could have been us in that position. So there's never going to be a time where I'm going to find this funny because at the end of the day, the people it hurts mostly is the fans. But Tottenham have got two problems. One's called Daniel, and the other one's called Levy. That's a fact. As long as Daniel Levy and Joe Lewis is at that club,
Savva agrees with that.
You're always going to have these problems at Spurs. At the end of the day, you look at the common denominator. The fact is that he has got the elite managers. He has got Mourinho. He has got Conte. Yet they go at Spurs. It doesn't work out. Pochettino, it doesn't work out. Pochettino, one of the problems with the Poch is that they didn't give him any money to spend. He was crying out for investment because he knew they were that close to genuinely challenging, not just in the Champions League, but also for the league. He just needed a couple of bit more investment. So I've just told this person trying to ring me get lost anyway. So he just needed. Sorry, when I'm talking football, no one gets involved in my business. Go away. If it's important, then time. Your life support, well, keep them alive late until I finish the podcast. You know what I mean? But that's how I am.
Love it.
But in terms of like the Poch, one of the problems Spurs have had from a footballing point of view is that they haven't replaced certain effective players. They haven't replaced Eriksen, who gave you that creativity, and they haven't replaced, kind of a young Dele Alli where you're getting goals from coming from the midfield. That's when you play
Kenny, you could go Walker, Vertonghen, Alderweireld, Rose, Dembele, Wanyama, Eriksen, Ali. Haven't replaced any of them.
And that is the problem. That's where your true problems lie. It's not the managers. It's the fact that you haven't placed those players who were effective and got you playing the kind of football which is conducive to actually winning trophies. You had some rotten luck in terms of like when you got to the semi-final of the FA Cup in 2017 and 2018, you played a good Chelsea side who won the league that season, and you had a good game, but they had more firepower than you. And the season afterwards, you played a very good Mourinho's Man United, and then by the time you got to the Champions League final against Liverpool, you played Klopp's Liverpool. So you haven't been that far away as a football club. But the problem is your ambition. For a start, in terms of like the salaries you pay your players, one of the reasons why you lost all those players is for monetary reasons. Yeah, all right, let's say it's for trophies, but it's for monetary reasons. Eriksen went to Internazionale for the money. Walker left for the money. Danny Rose got a 2-week fine because he actually spoke about this 6 years ago, and you still haven't done anything about it. He was the one who raised the alarm when he was talking about the player salaries. That you're trying to attract the best players to play for Tottenham, i.e. a Tottenham that was regularly in the Champions League. That's on your chairman. That's completely your chairman, because the fact is that when you look at Conte, you talk about all the things that Conte didn't do, but when he was at the, they say that Conte doesn't only works with good teams. Well, that team that he got to the quarterfinal of the European Champions of 2016 was the average Italy side. When he joined Chelsea in 2016, they imploded. They weren't playing for Mourinho. They got him a sack, and they had to get Hiddink in, and then he reinvigorated him. And I think,
but then also though, sorry, hang on, just to say as well, the thing is as well, one of the things why Conte was never going to work, his style of football is absolutely turgid as well. So most of the fans from day one didn't want to know because they didn't want to play wing backs. They didn't want turgid football.
Yeah, but he hasn't got the players. The problem, and that's the problem. He's at fault here Because simple reason is that when he went to Chelsea, he got Victor Moses and turned him into one of the best right wing backs. He hasn't even bothered to even try to do that at Tottenham. Like, for instance, his treatment of Jed Spence is extraordinary.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I mean, that's ridiculous. And then he's got the left foot. He got rid of Reguilon, but he hasn't got a left back to play to play that kind of style. So he hasn't even tried. That's where, if you're a Spurs fan, he hasn't even tried. He just played a simplistic football, like I said, basically playing like the old Italian teams of the 1960s, 1970s, where you soak up the pressure in the second half, you start using energy. That's not good enough. But the problem you guys got at Tottenham is that you're in 4th place with 10 games to go, albeit you got Man United to come to you at the
should be third as well, because they should have beaten Southampton. Really, I know they.
And you also got to go to Anfield as well. So the problem is, if you get a new manager in, you're writing off your season.
But that's fine. That's fine. That's the thing. I'm not. Isn't the season written off already? What are we playing for?
Because simple reason is that your Daniel Levy has put all his eggs in the baskets about Champions League qualification. Daniel Levy, on the surface, will say, I'm gutted United trophies. He's not. Daniel Levy is doing what we were doing at the Emirates under Arsene Wenger, where 4th is a trophy. And that's where he's got a problem, where for the dressing room situation, he may have to sack him. But in terms of the 10 games you've got to go, where there are going to be some players in your squad who are going to respect Kroenke, because you've got to remember, there's a difference in mentality between British players and our cousins in Europe. Now, our cousin in Europe would have just taken out with a pinch of salt what he said and said, yeah, he's right. But British players are precious, and therein lies a problem.
But I can't understand what we're playing for this season. Like, when you're saying for this season, the season's dead. The season was dead the moment this guy failed to beat Sheffield United away in an FA Cup.
Trophies, I agree with you. In terms of your trophies, 100% agree with you, because at the end of the day, it's about the glory. Danny Blanchflower, one of your greatest players, always said football was about the glory. I get it. But the fact is, from a business point of view, you've got a 60,000, 2,000 stadium, right? Where basically, obviously you've got a partnership with the NFL, and you've got concerts, and, you've got the rugby league, and, like Farms there. That's fine. But in terms of what you've been built on. You're built on Champions League foundations. Now, I agree with you. Top 4 is a waste of time if you're not going to go and compete. But for your finances,
yeah. But this is the thing.
Right.
There are so many fans like me now. We're done with that. I don't care about Tottenham Hotspur's finances. They've done nothing with it. If we get 4th this year, or 6th, or 7th, or 8th, it makes no difference to me, because this summer, let's say we get top 4. We will still go and buy players as though we're not a Champions League team that we could have bought if we were Europa League anyway, right? So for me, getting top 4 is this whole. Look, this is only me, right? And apologies, it's only me. This whole phrase "top 4" has killed football.
Yeah,
it's killing football.
That's why I do agree with you. That's why I do agree with Savva, because at the end of the day, that is one of the things we want to avoid at Arsenal. Because right now, I don't consider us as a top 4 club now. I won't tolerate it. I won't have it. I want what you're alluding to is that if you're in the Champions League, you want the players to be of a caliber that is going to help you win the competition and help you win the league. Because that's how I feel. And that is where therein lies a problem. That's where you have to get rid of Levy and Joe Lewis. Because simple reason is that both of those guys tend to place their reputations on being the toughest negotiators in football. But that's not in terms of buying great players. They're tough negotiators when they're trying to sell players and trying to, get another 20 million out of time.
Kenny,
so
this is
the
But Kenny, this is the problem. I think, I hear phrases like this all the time, like got to get rid of the owners. It's, this is a £1 billion business. Not a £1 billion business. This is a multi-billion pound business, which is no longer a football club. It's no longer
we've just said it, and we Savva, like we've all said Tottenham season's over. Daniel Levy doesn't think he is. Daniel Levy thinks it's like we've all to play for here with 10 games to go, top 4, and he's going to be doing cartwheels, isn't he?
Levy's about getting the top four, and that's what the problem we had at Arsenal under Arsene Wenger, where we were where obviously we sneaked in a few FA Cups here and there, but let's not forget we went 9 years without winning nothing. 9 years.
No, listen, I hear you. I'm not disagreeing with you, Kenny.
We're doing exactly what you were doing in terms of getting players who are just basically Europa League players trying to probably get us to sneak in the top four.
But Kenny, the difference
all about the same thing. So
the difference is that I agree. I agree with you. But the thing is, these owners aren't changing, and so long I hear the owners have to go, and it's like cool. I'm all up for that, and I have been since 2007. But they've literally spent. Imagine you spent your life's work. I'm not saying their whole life's work, but they've spent 22 years, which is a huge chunk of anyone's life, right? Building this empire. Now, notice I didn't say building this football club, because what they've built is not only a football club. The money revenues, the money streams that they make now are tenfold, and football is a stream over here. So if there was a P&L, right? There's the P&L for football. There's the P&L for concerts. There's the P&L for NFL. Everyone seems to think that if you protest and we can get them out, these guys have spent 22 years building this to be exactly the way it is, to be a money generating, let's call it what it is. It's a cash cow. They've built a cash cow, and that stadium is like an ATM. It prints money. The Formula One, the boxing,
NFL.
the NFL, the concerts, the stadium tours.
People that have done that. But if you think about it, before Abramovich went to Chelsea, that's where Chelsea are going. Remember, they weren't building a thing, but remember there was like a Chelsea hotel, the restaurants. Again, a lot of clubs try to do that, and
but they tried to do it. We didn't try. We've done it. If you look at any other football club, right? Look at any other football club in the top in the top half of anywhere in England, right? Who has done what Tottenham have done? You guys have a few concerts at yours, but that's not your driver.
We used to have X Factor as rehearsals. I don't want to talk about
that. But you see, guys, you see my point.
No, I do.
This club is more about now. If you go to that stadium, half the club shop is NFL, right? The partnerships that he's built is that now when they get stadium naming rights, you think of the deals they can do with people like DAZN, and Matchroom Boxing, and all the concerts and the NFL. We are no longer up against football club owners. This is now a multi-purpose business that when they sell, they're going to want the same numbers that these guys tonight are bidding for Man United. And we're talking, 4.5 billion north. So, it's Levy. It's Enoch. But I have yet to hear anybody anywhere that just keeps telling me, it's Enoch's fault. Yes, it is. But what are we going to do about it? How do they go? And you know the answer for me, Kenny? They do not go until they decide that they've made enough money, and then they go and make a whopping profit. Because do you know what they bought the club for, Kenny, in 2001? Have a guess how much they paid for Spurs.
They bought with sugar in it. They bought with Alan Sugar. They must have was it 15 million or was it 15 million or something? They bought
21.9 million, right? Yeah. And the club is now valued between 4.5 and 5 billion. It's insane. Yeah. So what they built on purpose, right? Why would they finally finish building it? We've just come out of COVID, and everyone thinks they're going to go, go on then, we'll sell now. They will sell if they get an extortionate bid. That's when they will sell.
You know what? The problem is, from what the sort of vibes I'm getting from you is that the football side of the things have been neglected in order to, like I said, lay preference to obviously partnerships with the NFL, partnerships with Matchroom and all that, make money. Then if that's the case, then I can't see you winning a trophy for another 10 years. Then you already haven't won 15. Then what you ask up, and you're going to be another Everton then. Because you think about Everton, when I was growing up as a kid, the big five clubs in the 80s before Sky came along were Everton, Spurs, Arsenal, Man United, and Liverpool. Well, I'm sorry, if that's the case, then you ain't going to win win for another thing because all right, don't get me wrong. If you try and take the like I said, the FA Cup seriously or the League Cup seriously, the problem you have is by the time you get to the final, the big teams whose managers place their their philosophy on winning trophies will play you in the final and beat you because they've got better players than you. And that's the problem. Until that mentality changes, then you're gonna be in the same sort of frame of mind. If I'm lucky enough to do a podcast with you in a year's time, in 3 years' time, 5 years' time, because that's the thing. It's about the mentality. You know, you're a big club on reputation. Even then, that reputation's dying. You're dying.
I agree.
You're dying in your ass, Tottenham, your club, and that's a disgrace to people like Bill Nicholson, Jimmy Greaves, Danny Blanchflower, big, Ted Ditchburn, all those sort of great Spurs people who talked about the glory days, the push and run. That's an embarrassment.
Listen, it's going to be interesting to see what happens at Tottenham Hotspur, that's for sure, in terms of management, but I don't think the owners are going anywhere, and I don't think it's a bright future from what I can see. Let's talk quickly about the last two things that I want to mention very quickly. Saka and Saliba nearing deals, Kenny, at the Arsenal. Martinelli has obviously signed. Do you think there's any qualms with these two signing, or can you see it happening pretty soon, Kenny?
I think it'll take time because I think the problem is that in any football club, when you get academy players to sign new deals, the first thing that happens is that when they get a little bit of success and they play for a long time, they look over at their mate with the peg next to them, thinking, "Oh yeah, this guy's been bought to the Arsenal. He's on 200 grand a week, or 250 to 300. I want that." Clubs are very reluctant, in my experience, in terms of giving players, especially academy players, that kind of budge up in terms of getting them to get the same sort of salaries as their established stars. I've never seen it happen. I mean, you have to look over, get on a district line, and go and see what's happening at Chelsea with Mason Mount. That is blatantly what's happening. What could be happening here? That academy player takes his first contract. He's in the first team. He's earning about 50 or 60 grand. The guy next to him is earning 250. I think I'm better than him, if not as good as him. I want what he's getting. That's where you have these sort of like 11th hour situations like we have at Chelsea. And it will happen with these guys. Yeah, it will get over the line, but there's going to have to be budging on both sides in terms of like what the clubs value the players and what the academy players who are now established will want as well. So it will happen.
I think it will happen. I think it will happen. I hope. Well, listen, I hope it happens. I've got no doubt that it won't. But the one that does surprise me more, or does kind of worry me more, is Saliba. Just because I feel like with Saka, Smith Rowe, Martinelli, they all seem to be in and around the club for the last few years. Saliba, I mean, hasn't been. But when I look at him, he does look hungry. He does look happy. And I think even though PSG and Real Madrid definitely will be sniffing around him, and certainly will in a few years' time, if they're not already, I do think that both of them will sign. The last thing I wanted to put to you, Savva, before we do wrap up, mate. Hodgson in, Vieira out. Very strange for Palace. Does this potentially put them in a relegation fight, or have they panicked so that they're not in one because they know Hodgson's experienced enough not to put them down? What do you make of this one, man?
I think that look, it's one of those that if they stay up, they can say, "Oh, it worked," but they could have stayed up anyway. We talked about this last week. I think this was really harsh. Patrick Vieira was allowed to play all of the top 10, then is sacked, and then now they've got a bit more of a favourable run. Yeah. It's, oh, well, sorry, see you later. We'll bring back Roy. Now, okay, but that's great. So what if they go down? They look really stupid. All right, now let's say they stay up. What are you doing? You're going to hire another manager, the likes of a Vieira, and what's your plans for next year? Where do you think know your lane? Where do you think you're going to finish next year? Is 12th not good? Don't get me wrong. I know that the gap between 12th and bottom is like 5 points or whatever it is, but is that not good for your club? What is it that they were expecting? Really, really strange one for me. I would have at least given him 3 or 4 games against some of the teams in and around them where they would be expected to take points and see if he could have got them out of trouble. But you look at the bottom 3, they've all changed their manager this year. They're all in the bottom 3 still. So sometimes it's better the devil you know, right? But I don't know. I mean, I think it's almost like a slap in the face going back to Roy from Patrick Vieira. So look, I'm not a fan of theirs, so it's not for me to judge it, but I think it's a really strange move, if I'm honest.
Yeah, Kenny, last word on this one. I'll give you two questions. Who, in your opinion, looks like they're going down this season? Does it include Palace?
Well, the thing about it, talking about the Palace situation, the problem is that if you're not happy with a manager, you've got to give a prospective manager at least 10 games to be able to work with something and save the situation. The fact is that, you know, there was 30 points. I don't know if they got 11 or 10 games, Crystal Palace, whatever it is, a new manager is going to need time. And the problem is that their results in the last 12 games and the fact that in three of those last games, apart from the game against us, they didn't score. So, you know, there was games where they didn't have a shot on target. So there has been a decline, and there have been Crystal Palace fans who are divided. But I think that the ones I'm talking to were asking for a change as early as February because they're seeing a slide. And the problem with Patrick Vieira, he's a victim of his last season's success. The fact is, you know, he had players. He got a lot of tune out of Zaha. He had Gallagher, who was trying to make impressions so he can catch the eye of Tuchel at Chelsea, and then they surprised everyone by getting a FA Cup semi-final, and they had some memorable wins. You know, they both Arsenal and Tottenham 3-0 thrashings at Crystal Palace. The season afterwards, now clubs tend to work you out. They know your strengths and weaknesses, and if you don't evolve, then what will happen is that you will be in that kind of situation. Remember, Sahar's been injured as well. But the problem with Crystal Palace is that, I don't know, I think Vieira was seen as like an Arsene Wenger type, you know. Yeah, let's sit in and talk. Let's have a relaxing situation. Whilst, you know, maybe Parish wanted an up and happen like Sean Derry. But in terms of teams that are going to go down, Bournemouth, 100% are going to go down. Southampton, let's just you know, cash your betting slips in about them going down. They're going down as well. And the third team could be anyone, really. It really could be anyone. You know, the fact that could be anyone. Anyone can get sucked in, even Palace. And that's why, you know, Patrick, you know, sadly had to, you know, they felt Patrick had to go because the problem is everyone's talking about the fixtures after Arsenal. You know, Leicester, is it Leicester at home? Then they've got some, you know, they've got one of them is West Ham. They've got games. But those teams they're playing, they're also fighting for points. And, you know, some of them in probably slightly better form than Crystal Palace. I saw Crystal Palace the weekend. We both did, Dan. Does that look like a team that has fight in them? Did you see the first goal when Zaha allowed Benjamin White just strip the ball off him? Did you see a team that looked like they had it in them to roll their sleeves up and fight for the fight? I didn't. I didn't. So it's not a given. Leicester, Jekyll and Hyde side. You know, they still got you know, good forward players. They still got Maddison. They might fancy their chances. West Ham might fancy their chances as well. Even though you look at it's because people are looking at the fact that because they haven't played the big teams, that it's going to be a bit different. They still got their work cut out. You know,
it's going to be tough, man. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. I'm with you. I think Southampton, Bournemouth, and I'm going to say it. I think Forest are bang in trouble unless they sort their away form out. But let's see. Listen, my thanks to Kenny Ken. My thanks to Savva. Make sure you head over to the Football Heritage and put a sub on Savva. Make sure you go over to Kenny Ken on Instagram and listen to his live fan cams and all of his content. Thank you all in the chat. Make sure you smash a like, subscribe if you're new. Get me up to 8K as quickly as you can, people. We're going to say bye. See you next time. My thanks to Kenny and Savva. And take care, people. Up the Arsenal.